Good morning. I'm happy to be here in your center, an important center at the Bethlehem University. That's a long answer. I'll try to make it short. I grew up in Bethlehem. I was born and raised here. I went to St. Joseph School, elementary school, middle school, and high school. I went to Talita. And it was both a wonderful experience. I wasn't planning on leaving Palestine, but the first Intifada started and universities closed and everything shut down. So education was a very important thing to my family, like many families here. So I was fortunate to have grandparents in the US. So my grandparents suggested to my family that maybe I should just go and study in the US. I was very lucky. My grandparents' story is a long story, but my grandfather wasn't able to come back to Palestine after '67, so he stayed in the United States. So me and my brother, we went, and I started university there. I was accepted at the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor, and I was planning to go there, and then one of my aunts suggested something very smart. She said, why don't you go to a community college for a semester to get used to the system in the US, since you've never been here, you've never been a student. So that was a very smart idea because I made a lot of friends there, and I got introduced to something that I never thought I would pursue as a career for the rest of my life. An advisor of mine said, take a class in anthropology. He made my schedule, like we do here at this university. Your advisor makes your schedule. So he made my schedule, and he put a class called anthropology in it. And I asked him, what is that? I never knew what it was. So he said, just go in, take the class, and see if you like it. So that started my love for the field of anthropology, and this is the moment that I decided I wanted to do anthropology and archaeology. So it was a chance coincidence. A smart advisor told me to do that, and it was really good. So I did a semester there, and when I transferred to the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor, I continued my degree in archaeology and anthropology. And I'll tell you later what anthropology is, and I'll explain it a little bit more. But I just want to say that I did a BA at the University of Michigan, and the University of Michigan had I don't know if they changed it. They had a regulation that a student that does a BA at their university should not do a master's at the same university. They want you to go somewhere else to get a different experience. So they found a good university for the area of interest, which was prehistory of the Middle East and the Levant. That's the area of interest that I had, especially stone tools. I know it's very specific. So they sent me to the University of Illinois in Chicago. And that's where I did my master's. And then after that, I did my PhD. So my master's and PhD were in anthropology and archaeology. The area of focus was the Middle East in general and the Levant, which is Syria, Lebanon, Jordan, Palestine, more specifically. So that's my degree in general. So let me tell you a little bit about anthropology, and that's what I'm teaching right now. So I can tell you about what I'm doing in general, and then later on more specifically. So in general, I'm teaching anthropology. Anthropology studies humans, us, our culture, who we are as human beings. And it sounds like it's a large field of study, which it is. So anthropologists divided it into different areas of specialties. I specialize in one of those areas. Let me tell you the areas very briefly. Cultural anthropology, which focuses on human culture around the world, how we do things, why we do things, why we dress the way we do, why we eat the way we do, marriage traditions, gender issues, religions. So it studies the origins of these things and how culture is practiced around the world. That's cultural anthropology. The second area of specialty is physical anthropology, which is how we evolved physically, how we changed physically. Linguistic anthropology is another subdivision. It focuses on the evolution of language over time and how we lose language. You know, we use language so differently. We have different dialects. So that's the focus of linguistic anthropology. And my area of specialty is the fourth subfield of anthropology, which is archaeology. Archaeology studies our ancestors, our origins, it does excavations. We try to understand human culture, but the interesting thing is none of these humans exist anymore. None of these cultures exist anymore. So the only answers we get is through digging through the ground. That's what makes archaeology different than cultural anthropology. In cultural anthropology, you can talk to people. You can ask questions. In archaeology, you have to dig in the ground, find what people around the world left for us in the ground, and then that's how you understand earlier civilizations. So what I did, and remember, I studied archaeology in the US, and that's how archaeology is taught. If I studied it in Europe, archaeology is a separate field than anthropology. In the US, archaeology is under the umbrella of anthropology, which is really wonderful because it gave me the human aspect and the technical aspect of doing archaeology. So I teach anthropology, all the subdisciplines, physical, the cultural. I have someone teaching the linguistics and the archaeology. So I teach all the subdisciplines, and I also started at my university, which is called San Xavier University. It's in Chicago. I started the Middle Eastern Studies program. So I also teach classes not only in anthropology and archaeology, but in Middle Eastern studies. So that's what I do at my university. I can tell you what I do now, but I'll tell you later what I'm doing in Palestine. So when I am not teaching at the university, I do field work. So archaeology and anthropology require a lot of field work. No, actually, since my area of specialty is in the Middle East, I do all of my field work in the Middle East. I worked in many countries. The highlights were in Syria and in Qatar, and of course in Palestine. So a little bit in different places, but these are the highlights of the work that I did in the Middle East, since my geographic area of specialty is the Levant and the Middle East. I did a lot of archaeological excavations, digs in Palestine, many of them in Syria, in Qatar. But I had a big change in my career while doing my field work, and I can share that with you. So in Syria, I was doing excavations, archaeological excavation. That was in 2009, 2008, 2009. And something happened that shifted my trajectory in my field work. We were digging a prehistoric site, very early, thousands of years ago. And the only question that the local people had for me, I was one of the few people that spoke Arabic. It was a mission from the University of Chicago, and I came with them. So the only question they had is, where's the gold? Where's the gold? Show us the gold that you were finding, which was surprising because the site that we were digging had, of course, no gold and no metal. It was prehistoric. There were only pottery and stone tools. But that tells you that people always connect archaeology with digging for gold. So what I ended up doing is I slowed down my excavation as an archaeologist, and I ended up sitting on the hill with the local people, talking to them about archaeology, what we're doing, explaining the site, and what archaeology really means. And this is something that's part of their heritage and part of their identity and part of their ancestors. So I ended up giving not only lectures on the mound we were digging, but I ended up going to the municipality and doing lectures there. They had a small museum. We ended up convincing the museum to do an exhibit, and I helped them with the exhibit as well. So I ended up being more involved with the people, explaining to them the value of archaeology. So this started a change of heart for me. So archaeology is important, absolutely. But then I started asking myself, why do I dig? What's the bigger picture? Who do I really want to help? what's the message from archaeology? Yes, the science is important and I still do it, but there was a bigger message, which is involving local communities in doing archaeology, in appreciating archaeology, in understanding what we're doing in archaeology. So that was extremely important. So that started a shift in my interest. And the shift happened, I'll bring it back to Palestine, but let me take you to Qatar for a minute, because I went to Qatar for almost 2 years. I was invited by the University of Copenhagen and the government of Qatar to work on a very big project in Qatar. The project was to highlight Qatari culture. And the Qataris did not want to identify themselves with a specific culture, which is pearling, the fishing of pearl and the selling of pearls around the world. And they had a very interesting site called Zubara. It was completely covered with sand, 16th, 17th century. And the mission of Copenhagen University was to excavate, uncover this town, this city. It was amazing, the size was huge, that dealt with the trade of pearls with Europe, with Asia, and the fishing for the pearls. So that's the mission I went on. But the reason they brought me in is not to be an archaeologist, but to communicate with the local Qatari community. So I was the director of something that I called community archaeology. So that's a field that I'm interested in right now. So they brought me in, and my mission was to communicate with the Qataris, the tribes. I had to learn all the tribes. I had to live with the tribes. I had to ask them about their tradition, their heritage. They had multiple abandoned villages. When Qatar started building itself in '72, people abandoned their villages and went to live in the city. So these villages are abandoned right now. So I worked very hard with the team to document these villages, to have the local people who are still alive, 72 is not far away, yeah? Who are still alive, to tell us the stories about their village, about pearling, about fishing. So my mission was to involve the local community in learning about the site, but also in learning from them about the site. So that was an absolutely amazing thing that I did. And I was lucky, one day I was in the market and this woman, Qatari woman, was looking at me. I looked like a foreigner, obviously. So she was looking at me, and then she approached me after an hour and said, "Can I help you?" And I said, "Yes, this is what I'm doing." So I ended up talking. She ended up inviting me to a women's gathering that they did in a very remote village. And that gathering was intended to keep the women connected and to tell stories about the past. So I went there one day and they liked me, and I ended up for almost a year going there every Wednesday to their social gathering and writing and doing oral history about what they do and all the wonderful things that they do. And this helped us build information about the site. And I want to share that the site was nominated for the UNESCO World Heritage List, and it was on the World Heritage List, and the information that I was gathered was included in the file that went on the World Heritage List. So that was really great, and it is already right now 2013 nomination on the World Heritage List. It was inscribed. So that's the work I did in Qatar. Yeah. So community archaeology is becoming my interest. So I love archaeology, but integrating archaeology with the community, talking to them about it, learning from them about the sites in their neighborhoods is something that's extremely important to me right now. And I teach that to my students as well. In Palestine, since I'm from here, since I've been in the US, I come every single year. So I've been in the US for many, many years, and every single year I come for 2 months in the summer to do work, to connect with family, to be with my parents, and to do archaeological work as well. So briefly, after my BA in '94, I came back to Palestine. And you guys all know what happened in '94, '95. The Palestinian Authority came in, yeah? So I met someone that opened the door for me to work in the I was maybe the second or third employee in the Ministry of Tourism and Archaeology in Jericho. So we started the Department of Archaeology there, and I worked there for a good chunk of time. Then I said, I have to do my master's. So I left that and I went to the US to do my master's. I wasn't sure I wanted to do my PhD. I came back and I worked in Palestine on a very big project that was funded by the World Bank, which is a survey of all cultural heritage, they called it, in Palestine. It was in 2000. It was surveying structures, archaeological sites. And then I decided to go back and do my PhD. So I went back to the university and I did my PhD. So while I'm here, I was in Palestine, I did a lot of archaeological projects. I worked with the ministry, closely with the Ministry of Tourism and Archaeology, and I excavated recently, the recent work, at Hisham's Palace, Qasr Hisham in Jericho. Did an excavation with the University of Chicago. So that was a really great excavation. You guys should all go visit Hisham's Palace. Yes, they opened the mosaic. They didn't do the official opening, but I was able to see the mosaics. It's absolutely wonderful. So, and I did, when I worked with the University of Chicago and the Ministry of Tourism, we did community archaeology as well. We did workshops for the children and the community as well when I was here with the group. I also was involved in the nomination file of Batir, with the village of Batir. So I was also working with them when they did the nomination file. It is inscribed finally, so it's on the World Heritage List. In danger, hopefully they'll come and reevaluate and it will be removed from the endangered list. But I did a lot of community archaeology there. And this year I'm involved with the nomination file for Jericho. They're nominating Old Jericho, Tell Sultan. So I am working with them at the moment, reviewing the file that they are gonna submit, hopefully the end of the year, to the UNESCO World Heritage Committee to inscribe Tell Sultan on the World Heritage List. So I'm very happy to be working on that at the moment. So this is related to my archaeological work. But do you want me to answer what I'm doing at the moment in Palestine? So this is what I've been doing, this is what I'm doing also. But the big reason I'm still here, even though the semester have started at my university, is that I'm on sabbatical. I was able to get a sabbatical, part of the summer until the end of the year, to work on a project that I initiated. The project it all connects. It's related to oral history. So what I'm doing currently in Palestine is interviewing elderly Palestinian men and women. I'm focusing on the district of Bethlehem because I only have till the end of the year. And I'm doing oral history, talking to people about their life experiences, or what we call lived experiences, their memories about their past, and their memories related to how society have changed, what they remember of the past, politics and how politics affected them. So I'm interviewing people from Bethlehem, Bejala, Bet Sahur. I finished interviewing in Al-Walaje. I'm starting next week in Batir. I'm also starting in the Heisha camp. So I'm trying to interview as many people as I possibly can. And I feel that this is extremely important because it's a primary source. You know, yes, history is written, but when people talk about their own lived experiences, their life histories, we get the details of how they lived each periods of their life, what influenced them personally, what affected their life personally. So I think these are important things that we should record and we should keep for the memory of not only the people of Palestine, but for the world, because the knowledge gained from these interviews is not only a pride for us Palestinians, but also is wonderful information about Palestinians and how they lived their lives in the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s here in Palestine. Video or? I came with the intention of doing audio, but then I quickly shifted to doing audio and video because you never know when you might need things. And I also been taking a lot of photographs. So I'm compiling as much as I can in terms of data, and later when I go back to the US, I'm going to be able to hopefully edit and pick and choose what I'll be using for this information. We get influence from so many different areas, from people and from living situations. So I think, as I told you, that advisor that just sent me to this anthropology class, his name is Dr. Williams. I still remember him. This was a long time ago, but he really opened my eyes to a field that I've never really understood or heard of. Living in Bethlehem was a big thing for me because I saw archaeological sites. We went to visit Qasr Hisham, for example. We see things, but we don't connect things. We don't really understand them. We don't know their stories. I live next to the Nativity Church. You know, so many churches and so many sites, but we never really know the details of them. So just my living situation in Bethlehem when I was growing up was very important. But also family. I have a wonderful family, like many people, but my family, I feel, really influenced my life so much on two levels. I have very strong women in my family, very, very strong women in my family. My grandmother, who lives in the US, is 91 years old. She goes to every protest related to Palestine while she's 91. She's writing a book right now. She's 91. No, she got her master's from the same university I went to, the University of Michigan, in social work when she was 58. After she raised all of her kids, she decided to go back, and she went with zero English, no English whatsoever. And she was able to finish her master's after she raised all of her kids. She's still determined to write and work and do a lot of that. So she was an inspiration. She is still an inspiration to all of the grandchildren. She has 14 grandchildren. I'm the oldest grandchild. And she is an inspiration to all of us. My mother, I think you guys all know, Saca. She started the Palestinian Heritage Center here. She definitely is still a motivation in my life. She is dynamic. She started a center in '91 when she saw a need to preserve Palestinian heritage, when she felt it was being lost, when she felt it was being stolen. So we've talked a lot about that, and I'm very proud of her to start the center. She's still working on it, and she still does so many activities. I can't keep up with all that she does. She has more energy than I do, and it's really impressive. So the women in my family were amazing, but also the support of two important males in my life. My father, Nader Saca, was amazing in my life, not only for me, but for my mom. He was a big support. He allowed her and gave her space and financial support to do all of the things that she's done. When I told him I wanted to go to excavations when I was still a student, it's like, are you gonna go sleep in the desert? Like, yes, Dad. It's like, okay, just take care. So he was very supportive. He supported when I really was contemplating, should I finish my PhD or not? He really pushed me to do that. So that was really wonderful. So he's been always supportive for my mother and I. And also when I got married, Firas, my husband, I got married late, and he is very much supportive of what I do. He appreciates the concepts of what I'm trying to do. The idea of community archaeology, heritage preservation, he really appreciates it. And I left him in the US, and I'm here on my sabbatical. And he said, yeah, it's difficult, but just go do whatever you have to do. So I appreciate his support for me to do that work. So the women in my family, the men in my family have really been a great support for me to continue my path. And they are all still passionate about what they do. Like they haven't, my mom, my grandma, my dad, they're like all still passionate about these ideas of preserving heritage, preserving our identities, talking to the world about who we are. And that's what I'm doing at my university in Chicago through the Middle Eastern Studies program, is telling them about who Palestinians are, who Bethlehemites are, who, being part of the Levantine, who we are. And I think this is extremely important and rewarding to myself, because they come into my class not knowing anything, and they leave with huge research projects that relate to topics they've never heard of. And they pick their own topic. I give them the freedom to choose their own topic of research because I want them to do something passionate. But it all relates to what we talk about in class. So the things that they do surprises me at the end because they end up learning so much about a field of study, about the Middle East or even anthropology that they've never known before. And like what happened to me, their advisors throw them in an anthropology class. And they asked the same question the first day. I asked them the first day, do you know what anthropology is? And I said, don't feel shy. We're going to talk freely. Maybe 2 people raised their hands from a class of 35, 40 that they know what anthropology is. And then they come out with an interest in it, and they come out doing PhDs in it. So I have few students that have gone to do a master's and PhDs in anthropology. And the first day they walked in, they had no clue what anthropology is. So that's really a wonderful feeling. My mother's path and my path I see as the same because it's cultural heritage preservation. And cultural heritage, according to UNESCO, has 2 aspects. Tangible, which is archaeological sites or building, and intangible, which is folklore and traditional clothing and embroidery. So I don't feel disconnected from what she does. I feel that we're both working on preserving heritage, and I definitely want to continue doing that. So I want to continue in the path of preserving heritage through my work in anthropology, oral history, archaeology, and preserving cultural heritage, like what we see behind me here in the art of embroidery. But the other path that sometimes I think I should leave education, leave teaching, and focus on that. But I realize that the joy I get from teaching students new things and learning about them and educating them and learning from them about what they know is absolutely fascinating. So every time I try to retreat from teaching, I decide, you know what, no, let me stay in it. I think there's a value in not only what I can give to students, but what makes me happy in what the students go back and tell their families. And I hear that all the times because they don't hear much about the US in the area I'm in Chicago. So students go back to their families and tell them what they've learned in class. And I had hundreds of students independently telling me the same things. So I feel like it's an educational intrinsic circles. It keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So I'm going to continue in teaching. I think it's important. And I intentionally teach introductory courses. I get the students fresh. So I like to teach introductory cultural anthropology, especially in archaeology. And I like teaching upper level classes related to the Middle East. But I really like to teach introductory courses to work with the students from the base up. So that's extremely important too. I would love to be teaching here in Palestine. I think that would be a wonderful thing. I would love to do it. I enjoy being in the classroom, and I feel I'd love to teach Palestinian students specifically. I've been teaching American students for many, many years. I love to teach Palestinian students because I want them to know that Turath and Athar is not all things. I want them to look at it as the base of who we are. And that they are lucky that they have a solid base. Our heritage and our athar is our identity, and that they should be very lucky that they have a strong base to build on. Their ancestors, their great-grandparents, the people that came in prehistoric times into Palestine, to Bethlehem. We have amazing prehistoric sites in Wadi Khreitoun. This is a base that was left for them, and they shouldn't abandon it. They should be proud of it, and they should build on it. So modernity is wonderful. Globalization is a reality, and it's great, but they shouldn't forget about the solid base that they have, and it should give them strength, power of identity. And I see the lack of identity in many people I teach in the US. And I want to tell our Palestinian students how lucky they are to have a wonderful base that they can build on. Go out to the world, they should, but always remember that they have a strong base to lean on and to build on. And that's our heritage, our Turath and our Athar. And one day maybe I'll come and teach in Bethlehem University. You never know. I teach a lot of students. I teach our university, even though I'm lucky, I work really hard to do research because our university focuses on teaching. So it's a teaching university, so I teach a lot of classes, but I always find time to do my research. So every semester I teach 3 to 4 classes. Now I'm not teaching, I'm only teaching 3 because I'm the chair of the department. I have been the chair for the last, a lot, for the last 6 years. I've been the chair of the Department of Sociology, Anthropology, and Criminal Justice. These 3 programs are together. And I'm happy about that because their base is social justice. So what links them together is social justice and humanity and human rights. And they fit beautifully in sociology, anthropology, and criminal justice. So I've been the chair for a long time, so I have time to do chair work. So I teach a little bit less classes, but our classes are full. We support smaller classes. I don't like teaching 500 students because I feel my message could be lost. It's not easy, but our students are 40 student classes, and I usually teach, 2 to 3 classes every semester. So that's a lot of teaching every semester, plus doing chair work, plus directing the Middle Eastern Studies program, which we connect to the Middle Eastern community in Chicago. So I do a lot of activities with them, and I involve my students with them. They've been doing oral history with the Arab community, Arab American community in Chicago, and we do a lot of activities on campus as well. So.